Welcome everybody. October 17th, a Friday. We are excited to be kicking off this two-part webinar focused on what else but Gen Z and AI, two topics that I feel like everyone on the call has a lot of thoughts about. And we're hoping we can bring some of our research from the Handshake platform to really help the conversation and have a great discussion between all of us on what is happening and how we're going to approach it moving forward. So with that, I would also like to call out my colleague Vivian, who's on the call. We will be going through a lot of our research and just being able to talk through a lot of what's happening. My role at Handshake is Director of Research. And Vivian, yeah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, and thanks for having me. I'm Vivian, and I'm also based in San Francisco, bright and early, so really appreciate everyone who's joining us from the West Coast here. I led product strategy for many years at Handshake and recently took on a direct product ownership role, owning enterprise and AI future workforce. So what does that mean? It's super important to me to own this role because AI is reshaping the economy full stop. And I see Handshake as really being at the center of this shift because we are the bridge between the job seekers, the educators, and employers. So my job is to create the product that helps job seekers become AI ready and then connect them with opportunity. So I'm super excited here today to share a little bit about what I've seen in our network on what AI ready means, but more importantly, hear how you're thinking about it so that we can evolve our product to help job seekers build and showcase and ultimately get hired for being future ready.
Amazing. Thanks, Vivian. And so that is the really exciting part about this. We get to get really high level, think about the platform as a whole and what we're seeing. And Vivi can also really think a lot about from the employer perspective and the product perspective and how this is all evolving very quickly. So super excited to do that. But before we dive into all the data, I do want to give a sense of where the data is coming from and why we believe this is a very valid read of what's happening on the network. So on the next slide, you'll see a chart showing for every Handshake Network Trends report, and we've done these for about 4 years now. We do a periodic survey of college seniors. We weight those of the 18 million plus students and alumni on the platform. We focus on college seniors right now, and we weight that to be representative of location, of demographic, as well as selectivity of school. So we believe we're getting a very strong read on what students are feeling right now. In addition to that, and I believe many of you on the call are part of this network, but there is this ecosystem that's happening with Handshake where you have students engaging with employers and employers engaging with students, students going to career centers and schools to really understand where they should be sending their resumes, how they should be thinking about internships, et cetera. We get to really look at that platform data and then ground it there with like millions of interactions and think about like, okay, what does that tell us about early talent and AI? So a lot of what you're seeing is grounded in that, and we're really proud of that work. So with that, I do want to put a question in the chat, and I know it's going to be a busy chat, but I encourage you to just like go in there. But in the chat, I'd love to start with just benchmarking. What trends are you seeing right now? What are you really thinking about when it comes to early talent and AI? And please flood the chat. We'll call out some things as it comes through. Students using AI. Okay. Very, very important. And I think something Vivian is thinking a lot about as well. Candidates using AI tools to apply on their behalf. We know that with AI, there is the ability to accelerate a lot of workflows, a lot of what's happening. AI to edit resumes, and I would say maybe employers editing job descriptions with AI. There's a lot of usage there. Identifying candidates with AI. A lot of different ways this is happening. Feel free to put this there as we move forward. A lot of what we'll be talking about now is how Gen Z is using that AI in their daily life and what that means for the job market. So keep those responses coming in. In the meantime, though, we'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing. I really like to start that because right now there is a lot of discourse going on about AI and early talent. So I like to bucket it into three categories, but there's, again, a lot happening. The first one is that we're seeing a lot of conversation about AI eliminating early talent. There's a Wall Street Journal article that led with AI is wrecking a fragile job market for college graduates, and AI is killing graduate jobs, question mark. There's a lot of headlines here that are very strong in the sense of like AI is doing something to the early talent market um, that is really affecting them. So that is one thread of narrative. And the interesting thing about the second thread is that it is in many ways the flip and complete reverse of that. So actually on the same 24-hour news cycle, the Wall Street Journal released that first article and then that second article, which is in their 20s, making $1 million a year. Students and Gen Z are making more money than ever coming out of college if they have these AI skills. As well, the average age of a founder of an AI company is decreasing to someone in their mid 20s. A lot of disruptive organizations right now are really founded by those that are really young and doing things with AI. So we have these two threads that are kind of in conversation with one another. And then the third one, which I think is very relevant to folks on this call, is that companies are and aren't making efficiency gains with AI. So on the one hand, you see Goldman Sachs believing that AI is showing positive signs of boosting productivity and GDP. At the same time, though, you have employers saying that they are adding or removing departments based on their ability to replace it with AI. But you have things like the MIT report, which identified many generative AI pilots failing at companies, that AI is being integrated in, but it's really mixed in terms of how it's coming through. So taking this as a whole, and there's about 80 other threads that we could talk about, but I just want to acknowledge that a lot is happening right now in the space, and there is really, we want to make sure we're talking about the same thing here. So we'll get to that here and unpack a little bit because I think our research shows a little bit of what's going on there. And I know on the product side, we're thinking a lot about how we're engaging with this. Okay, so let's kick it off. How is Gen Z using AI? So I'd like to really set this out with who is Gen Z and how impactful are they? So one thing we know about Gen Z is they are a demographic reality, okay? What does this mean? This means that 1 out of 5 members of the labor force right now are Gen Z. So they are very much already in the labor force. We also know that they will be fewer in a couple of years because of the 2008 kind of demographic cliff that happened. There are 15% fewer 18-year-olds in 2039 than there will be today. So that means a lot of the early talent pipelines that you're seeing now will change pretty dramatically. And then third, that we already know that folks, by the end of the decade, there will be 15 million members of the labor force that are retiring. The final part of the baby boomer generation will be retiring. So we know that Gen Z plays an important role, and early talent is playing an important role in how organizations grow and change. And I think that's really relevant when we look at how they're using AI. So Gen Z, according to both our research and external research, are the fastest adopters of generative AI tools. So when we think about Gen Z, we often talk about digital natives, that they grew up with an iPad in their hand. They were very native to using tools like this and with really accelerated internet. But we also know they're coming of age during a pretty critical time for generative AI. According to Pew Research, 58% as of March 2025, 58% of adults, Gen Z adults, use ChatGPT. That is the only group that where a majority of them have used it. And you'll notice kind of the inflection of that growth from 2023 was the strongest among Gen Z. We know that 38% of employed adults that are Gen Z say they have used ChatGPT on the job, and that compares far fewer of older generations. So they are really bringing this usage to the labor market. And that's kind of validated by our research from our latest report. Generative AI use is very common and it has grown pretty significantly just within 2 years. 24% of the class of 2026 uses generative AI on a daily basis. So college seniors right now, that is up from 13% in 2024. So just thinking about the usage patterns of just two groups of seniors, very much increased. A majority of Gen Z is using generative AI at least once a week, with like only 19% saying they're not using it at all. And so, Vivian, I'm curious your take on that piece, like the usage of generative AI with this generation.
Yeah, I think all this data really points to me how Gen Z is really becoming the most AI native. And what's even more remarkable is the pace of that adoption, right? The fact that Seniors this year are using it daily at twice the rate of seniors from last year. I think that is really a steep slope, and I wonder if there's any other moment or technology in history where we'd have seen adoption this fast, right? Like I can only think of maybe when social media was coming out, but still that was I could imagine that's a quite a shallower slope. So I think for me, this really underscores why so many executives are having those conversations about the importance of Gen Z in building their future workforce because they're seeing this generation really pushing the pace of adoption and being able to pull their organizations forward along with them.
Yeah, thanks. And I think about Vivian like that like the time it took to get Twitter or Facebook to
Yeah.
1 billion. It's insane. It's been a very short window to get ChatGPT to that. Calling out some comments from the chat. Jeff, thank you for defining early talent, which are individuals at the beginning of their careers with around 5 years or less of professional experience. Anita making an observation that interns are using AI as a resource. I think these are all really helpful context here. So definitely keep the conversation going in the chat as well. But yeah, Vivian, you make a great point that like this is kind of a technology. It's crazy to think that in 2022, I think like that's when ChatGPT 3 was launched. And I mean, we've both been at Handshake for that time, and just to imagine that a tech has made this much of an impact in this period of time is kind of wild. So next slide. So then how are they using these generative AI tools? And I think it's really important not to just say they are using it, but they are using it in specific ways. We like to say that they're using it, at least in our data, they're using it in a way that's collaborative more so than a crutch. Um, so brainstorming and self-teaching are the most common ways this senior class is using it, with more than 2/3 of seniors that use generative AI tools saying that they use it for brainstorming or self-teaching, with far less saying they use it to do things like automate work or create content. So there is kind of this hierarchy of usage among students, at least seniors right now, that are utilizing it. Next slide. And then students rate their skills. We ask them to assess for those that say they used it. How would you say you are? How skilled are you in these different kind of domains? So generally, students feel pretty confident outside of writing code, which makes sense. That might be more of a specialized area. But in things like written communication, synthesizing information, brainstorming, many students feel very competent in those areas. And that comes alive in a quote and some of the interviews that we've conducted. Uh, One life science major senior right now said they use AI to support their learning. It helps me better understand concepts I struggle with, creating study strategies, breaking down complex information. I recognize that some people rely on AI to do all their work for them, and I don't want to do that for myself. I never want to be in a position where I have to rely on AI to do my job. And I think what's important with this one, and Vivian, I want your take too, but I think one thing that came alive for me here is that many of the same conflicts that we're probably having in water cooler conversations together about like where exactly is the right line is something that I think a lot of our respondents spoke to us about, that they're not sure where that line is and they want to be mindful of how like what is the difference between using it for my work versus like kind of offloading things. And so yeah, Vivian, I'm curious, like, did you have any takes on this?
Yeah, I think the first thing that stands out to me is that Gen Z is actually showing a lot of judgment and discretion and how they use AI, right? Like if I think about all those bars on the chart you showed previously, Randy, it's like there's a lot of different cases. I think people have different opinions of where is it okay and where is it not okay, and there's been a lot of thought put into it. And in the industry, there's not really a standard. So I think to me that runs maybe counter to some of the more attention-grabbing headlines we see about rampant cheating. Like, yes, there certainly is that, but there's probably a much bigger gray area of what is okay and what makes something not okay. So what that gets me thinking about is how can we do a better job defining those standards, right?
Mhm.
Like what is a good use and a bad use of AI, and where do we cross into that from the gray area into something that's like truly not good. I think about something that, we are doing within Handshake. Like I think we are a pretty AI forward organization. I like to think that. And being AI forward, not just in adoption, but also kind of defining the standards of what good looks like. One of the things that we've been doing as a product leadership org is thinking through like should the product manager role look like in a world where AI is available and can be helpful in many cases. So one of these like good cases we've thought through is, well, AI can actually make your speed to prototype something much faster, right? So as a product manager, you can take on more of that work and not have to rely solely on a designer who's like a lot more fluent in prototyping. So one of the things that we've been putting together as a guide for like, PMs should be expected to design a quick prototype using one of these quick AI tools and then be able to collaborate with their designer on that prototype to move it forward rather than having to start from zero. So to me, I think that's a great use of AI. I think it's great that we're kind of defining that standards and showing it off to the PMs in our organization. And it's not just kind of rolling that out to employees who are here today, but we're also thinking through how might we make AI prototyping a part of our interview process so that new people joining our organization have that clear expectation that that is part of the job and that it is a positive use of AI. So that's I think, a long example to say. I think there are many of our employer partners out there who are using AI in positive ways. I've heard of some, consulting firms automating some slide making, which as a former consultant is music to my ears. I think that's a great use of AI. And so I would love to have our partners get more credit for adopting these tools in a good way and helping the early talent be more productive and really be on the forefront of this technology.
I love that. Yeah, and I had no idea we were doing that in the interview process too, which is really interesting. Yeah, and I'd love to hear in the chat too. I know Microsoft, Anita was talking about Microsoft Office now has been a game changer, both positive and negative. Like, I'm curious, especially in the interview process, if your teams are thinking about that. It's a very interesting thing that many different teams are approaching differently. So, kind of to Vivian's point on the next slide, we see we dove deeper into why might a student refrain from usage? So for those that say they didn't use AI for a certain task, whether it be written communication or brainstorming, you'll see the big lime green line bar there for the left four tasks: written communication, brainstorming, research, self-teaching. The number one reason students say they don't do that is because they believe that it's important that they do it for themselves. So there is this interesting kind of dynamic here where students are deciding to use or not use. And I would imagine whether it's for applications or other things, there's cohorts of students that are making choices not to do that. And I think we're all trying to find that line, and maybe that line changes day by day. But it's something that, when we paint one cohort of people as all doing this thing, like, I think it's really important to understand that, like, that's not always the case. Similarly, on the right side with synthesizing and creating content, you'll see that, like, the number one reason in those cases are that they have had the opportunity to use it for those pieces. But I really find this, I think it's important to do myself piece really interesting. So we dove into that a little further, that you can see on the next slide here. And we grouped uh, the class of 2026 based on their responses in terms of kind of archetypes, right? So there's just like normal users that use it for a few tasks here or there. And then there are groups that use it for many cases. So we called super users those that use it for 7 to 8 tasks here. Um, we'll see a little bit of that breakdown, but we found that 7% of the respondents are using it for a variety, pretty much all the cases that we put forward. 20% are using it for absolutely none. So these abstainers, the people that just don't use AI, period. And then a number of people fall somewhere in between. So on the next slide, you can see the piece of abstainers and their reason for not wanting to use it. Interestingly, the number one is that they just don't want to become reliant on it, that they're not using it because they just don't want it to kind of replace tasks they're doing, which I think we all kind of can relate to. Followed by ethical concerns, which we'll get into in a little bit because I think it's really where the employer role can come in here. And about 46% of those that don't use it say they just didn't find it useful. Next slide. Uh, Interestingly here, well, actually, you know what? Vivian, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but yeah, I'm curious what you think, what really stands out for you about these breakdowns of majors across super users and abstainers.
Well, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but I
No,
think,
please.
well, to me, I think the biggest thing I notice is how colorful the super users chart is. And what that
Yeah,
means is AI super usership really transcends major, right? And that is, I think, such a great proof of our mission as Handshake to help employers break down the lines of major and school to really find people who have the skills to do the thing they're looking to do. And so for me, this is a great example of how AI can be useful and is being used across many different disciplines. And I think it puts more of the onus back on our shoulders as a Handshake product team to try to help employers look beyond major and really find those candidates who would be best at that job.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for not wanting to steal the thunder. Actually, the next one kind of gets at this point as well. So one thing we looked at was the all resumes submitted in 20 by the senior class right now versus the class of 2022. We looked across all resumes and we looked for AI keywords in each. And one interesting takeaway here is that the number of resumes since the class of 2021 that mentioned AI has doubled, right? And not only has it doubled, and you would expect it maybe in a computer science major in math and physical sciences, but beyond that, it's increased in virtually every major. And in fact, not virtually every major, it has increased across every major. So this is increasingly becoming a signal that students are saying they have these skills or are utilizing it or deeming it important enough to place in their resume. You'll see business majors have like 4x the number of the share of resumes that have use these things, civics and government communications. And it's kind of gets to your point, Vivian, about like the kind of increasingly colorful ways or the ways in which different majors really are leveraging these tools, and that it's not just a major level thing, it is a generational thing. And on that point, yeah, Vivian, anything else to say there?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a big open question that I'm really interested in exploring. Is what does it mean to be AI ready? Like, what is the skill, right? Like we talked about how AI ready does not map to major. It probably doesn't map to skill either. Like if I put AI ready on my profile, Randy, like what would that mean to you? That probably
Yeah,
means
good
it should
question.
mean not that much, right? And as I talk to employers in our network, I think one of the most interesting things I'm seeing this year that's different than any other year is the emphasis on some of what I think of as like more durable skills rather than like technical competencies, right? I hear a lot from employers like, sure, we want you to have a baseline proficiency in XYZ skill, but the more important things are we want to know if you're adaptable, if you're creative, if you show entrepreneurship, because that's the type of person that can grow with our organization and be really not just like immune to these changes, but really be able to lean in and take advantage of some of these technological changes. So I think for me that again, I think is a really cool opportunity for Handshake to help students showcase those skills that are very difficult to pinpoint in a keyword or a single keyword. And I think that's a great segue maybe into one of the product innovations. So one of the big investments we're making here is around conversational AI. Um, so it's think of it as like a way to help tease out signal behind a skill. So before I dive into like more about what the product is, I kind of want to take a step back and talk about like why this is so important to us. I saw in the chat a lot of examples of when we were asking, you know, what are the AI uses you're seeing or what's top of mind for you? I saw a lot of students using AI in the job application as one theme. And then employers using AI to review and parse through applicants as another theme. And both are good. But AI talking to AI is not that interesting, right? Like if we're helping students write you a message using AI and employers are responding using AI and the humans are never interacting, and there's like no additional signal or value, that's I would say we have not done our job well because we're not really taking advantage of that unique position that we have to be the bridge between these people. And so, what we are doing here is having more of a, I would call it like a conversational back and forth with a job seeker so that we can tease out the signal that they might not be able to articulate themselves. So, if we go back to like that nuance of what does it mean to be AI ready? And like I mentioned before, like if I just put AI ready on my skill, that's meaningless. If I put even I'm creative on my profile, that's probably also not very helpful to you. But if I can have a conversation with someone like a career counselor or an interviewer, and actually be able to share some of the experience behind that skill or why did I say I'm creative, that's a lot more meaningful and insightful to the employer to be able to kind of gauge it for themselves if that means AI ready in their own words. So maybe one example here is I heard of someone in my network who used one of these AI prototyping tools to create a little app for themselves that tells them when fruit is ready at their local farmers market, which is amazing because it's both a great use of technology and I think a really like clever, I think just a clever personal hack for themselves. That would never go on a resume or profile, right? That would feel, if I were that person, I think I would feel pretty silly putting that on my resume. I would feel like, where does it even go? It's not a work experience. It's not coursework. And so the goal of something like this conversational AI and Handshake is to be able to ask a thoughtful question around something like, hey, this employer is looking for creativity as a skill that's really important to them. Can you think of anything creative you've done recently? Maybe a personal project or a hobby. And that's a great way to kind of tease out that experience and encourage that candidate to showcase that they've exhibited the skill and not only say they have the skill, but give an example of why they have that skill. So that's just one example of how we're using conversational AI to really tease out that nuance of what it means to be AI ready with some strong examples so that we can kind of be that advocate for the candidate and showcase to employers why these candidates we're bringing to them are a great fit for their role.
That. Yeah, and I love the fruit example. And to be honest, like when you think about it, so many of these projects, like, they're so new. So it's like the ability to kind of deploy this stuff in hobby projects are really a great indicator of how successful someone will be in these spaces. So I think that is like genuinely cool. I'm a little biased, but yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think the really cool thing about, I mean, what we're showing here is on the student side, right? This is the student experience where they're talking with the handshake agent, but we're going to apply the same thing on the employer side where we're able to tease out what do you mean by creativity? Like, do you want to see that someone has you know, painted a piece of like fine art? Or do you want to see that someone has taken initiative? And we can kind of tease out that signal from the employer side on what they're looking for, and then ask that more specific question to the candidate so that we're really able to draw out the information that is most important to the employer.
with that. So with that, we will pivot a little bit too. So if the first part's how they're using it, I think it's important to ask, especially with all the folks on the line, what do these mean for early talent recruiting? And we have some ideas based on the data we found, and I know this speaks to a lot of what we're seeing in the chat right now. So I'm going to skip this question that we had, but feel free to throw it into the chat. We did want to know how you're using AI there, so feel free to plug it away in the chat. We're seeing it. But rather than spend a ton of time on that, I want to go a little bit to what I think this might mean for employers right now. One question we asked was, given all this, like everything related to AI, what do you need to succeed in the workforce with that? And I think it's a really interesting takeaway here that to succeed in the workplace, the first bar chart here is say, I will need more formal instruction on how to use AI tools. So think about trainings and whatnot. I will need more hands-on practice with generative AI tools. And finally, I will need a better understanding of the legal and ethical issues related to generative AI at the workplace. So there are three things here. Only one of them stands out as actually something that a majority of seniors say they actually need from employers. They don't believe, or less than a third believe, that they need formal instruction on it, which kind of speaks again that chart that shows the uptake and kind of the usage of generative AI. Really, in a lot of ways, Gen Z is outpacing a lot of other cohorts in terms of usage of that. Similarly, with hands-on practice, it's not something they agree they need. But this last one, the understanding of legal and ethical issues related to generative AI, I think it speaks a lot to how, given that we're all still learning about how this applies, students are really seeking employer guidance on how do I actually deploy it? How do you want me to deploy it at your organization? And so I think this is a pretty important takeaway here. And, I've heard of employers and many employers talking about building guidelines. Vivian kind of mentioned that a little bit about like, how do you begin prototyping as someone who previously in another world did not prototype? Like, how do you use these tools? So I think that's something really important to take away there. On the next slide, additionally, this is a pretty dense slide, but I think it's really important with what you all were sharing out in the chat. We asked students two things. Number one, have they used generative AI for these tasks? And number two, do they think that is usually acceptable? Okay, so the purple line here is they've done this. The orange line here is they think it's acceptable. Uh, Across the board, except with the creative assignment, across the board, it's more likely that they believe something is acceptable than they have actually done it. So when it comes to summarizing notes, 84% or more than 4 to 5 students say yes, that's okay to do to summarize your notes. Two-thirds have said they've actually done that though. Writing a message in a second language, only 60% have done that, which might make sense if they're native English speakers in the US, maybe. But 80% or 4 to 5 students say, yes, that's okay to do. It's something that helps you get there, which is a really interesting dynamic here about like what's acceptable and what's actually done. Here is where folks on the line, this might be interesting to you. Two-thirds believe that it is acceptable to message a recruiter using AI. Less than half say they've done it. So I think when we see in the chat how people are using it, it's just something that like at least with just this generation, they kind of know they are using it. They see it as acceptable. Similarly, you're writing a resume or cover letter, almost two-thirds say that it's acceptable, half say they've done it before. So Xavier saying, I wonder how many students feel good about being honest about their AI use. I think that is an important part here too. Like maybe this have done it before thing is underreported. That is a common bias that shows up. But it's pretty notable, Savannah. It's pretty notable that folks are saying that like a lot of these engagements that students are having with employers it's an acceptable thing to do. Vivian, I'm curious your take on a few of these.
Yeah, and I'm watching in the chat just the variety of uses that we're seeing. Like, I even saw some AI note takers say hi directly to us in the chat at the beginning,
Yeah,
which is awesome. So I think it's really cool that we have a lot of like AI forward folks here on the line. I see content creation, job descriptions, and to me, like my personal point of view here is like there's no stopping AI, and it should not be a good thing for us to be more productive, to work better together. So I really think that it's important and critical that we define what good looks like. And so,
mm,
the folks here who are using AI for note taking, that's great. So are students, right? And so I think to be out in the open of like using AI to take notes and summarize your information and keep you organized, that's a great way to use it. But maybe some of these other use cases, if you're using AI in an interview process, where you're told you're not supposed to, that's a hard line. So I think again, go back to the theme of drawing more clear guardrails for what good looks like, celebrating some of those good use cases that we are all doing, and then helping navigate some of the gray areas is going to be more critical over time.
absolutely. I love that. And I'll close out here with the employer perspective. Granted, we have a lot of employers online. We surveyed 1,000 recruiters about their thoughts about a lot of these topics. Um, 83% believe that entry-level hires are going to be important for their future success. So I think when we think about the elimination of all entry-level roles, which I think is a bit of a clickbait headline, I don't think we're seeing that, at least from the perspective of recruiters. Almost 3 out of 4 recruiters say that employers say that entry-level candidates are more comfortable using emerging technology with senior employers. That's kind of validated with what we're seeing in our data as well as what we're seeing with kind of external research. And 71% of employers believe that entry-level hires add immediate value to their organization. So, I mean, it's a pretty good sign, at least from employers in our research about entry-level hires and early talent as a whole. So I think it's a lot of things that we'll talk about next week in terms of like, are these roles going away? I think we have some additional data that kind of gives some texture to that, but like, at least for the time being, the short answer would be, I don't think so. Next slide. And this just gives a little bit of texture from two hiring managers, one saying AI isn't taking away roles from the workforce, but adding new and different roles. Be open AI can how it can help improve day-to-day tasks. As we are still acclimating to this new world, which I think is very important to acknowledge, I believe many entry-level candidates will have a better understanding and knowledge of AI. And thinking back to that one chart that showed where they actually want the help, where employers can really be helpful, is what does good look like, to quote Vivian. So Vivian, I'll let you close it out here. But yeah, curious your take on all that research.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a lot of thoughts here on this slide, but let me just voice over so that you're not all staring at words. I think the first thing for me, Randy, is like the point you just made around AI is changing the workforce. It's not taking away the workforce. And I think it's kind of changing the skills that are more important, right? And I really see the value of those who are most tech savvy, the most creative in being able to pull their organizations forward. I'll share one more example. Like one of our colleagues here, who I think is very AI savvy, was taking some of our presentation materials and made a little video to train internal teams on a talk track that she wasn't able to deliver herself across many teams because it would have taken like 10 meetings. So I think that's again a great use case, and I want to work with more coworkers like that who find these good use cases, model them across our organizations, and up-level how we all work. And I really do believe that, with early talent, they are really at the forefront of this change, and they are going to be the ones that find these creative ways and show the rest of us how it's done. The second thing is we talked about this a lot, but lead from the front and model what good looks like because it's kind of pointless, in my opinion, to hide from AI usage. Like we are clearly all using AI in some way, shape, and form here today. I think there are many great use cases, and I think the more that organizations can be clear on what good looks like and what are some of those gray areas, the better it is for everyone across their teams. And then the last thing is really on the point around our product vision. We inevitably are seeing AI used on both the candidate and the employer side. And so I am doing a lot of thinking about how can we use AI to add more signal and not more noise. So what I mean by that is like, how do we use AI to really get unique information from job seekers, from employers, so that we can bring them together, like bring those best matches together, and not just throw more information at them, right? And so that really speaks to like the backbone of a lot of our product vision and thinking over the next year is this conversational experience, really teasing out the signal from both sides and helping both sides separate the signal from noise using AI responsibly.
Love that. Um, well, there's a few observations here. We have about 5 minutes left, so I want to like open it up for Q&A. To your point, Vivian, we got AI in the chat, giving some takeaways. Observation about that being that all the takeaways are coming from Vivian, so just taking that a little personally. But in the chat, would love any questions you have in these last 5 minutes. Would love any reactions you have to the research or things that you'd like us to elaborate on. I think we have a lot of people thinking pretty deeply about this in the chat. Um, and I think we're all kind of evolving with this. So yeah, please toss in questions. And yeah, I don't know if we want to use the Q&A function for the questions, but we'll monitor both. I was saying that they definitely use AI tools to adjust the tone of recruiting roles to different audiences and generate headlines for A/B testing. Love that. I actually think an earlier comment on entry-level roles or hires are great. They have so much enthusiasm when it comes to AI for different kinds of content creation. A lot of them are actually great as influencers, and we do a lot of video content with AI savvy Gen Z hires are great assets. I think that's also a really interesting corollary that I know Vivian has done a lot of work in, but like AI, they're taking it up a lot quicker. But a lot of the way we communicate now, I mean, I would say Gen Z is kind of leading the charge on that, whether it be short form video and whatnot. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, Tally. to your question, and Vivian, feel free to jump in on any of these. As a 62-year-old, what's the best way to learn and use AI? I mean, I think like to Vivian's point, we are all in one way or another already kind of using it in the tools we have, like autocomplete, and there are like very basic forms and more extended forms. I would say play around with ChatGPT and or Claude and like just have a conversation. I think part of the way this blew up has been that they are pretty accessible tools generally, and a lot of the tech was kind of there in some form or fashion before. This has just really made it accessible for a lot of people. So I would say just play around and experiment.
Yeah, I mean, I think an interesting personal use case could be like the next time you're thinking of Googling something, put it in ChatGPT or put it in another AI tool and see what suggestions it comes back. You could, ask back some questions and get some responses. There's no like, I don't think there's like a right starting point. It's just like try it and see, and you might find a use case that you didn't think of before.
Uh, yeah, that's a great point. Karen, in the Q&A asks, is resistance to AI a barrier for early career hires? I think that's a really interesting and spicy question. I mean, my immediate take would be it really depends on your organization. I do think the culture of an organization that is very particular about doing things a certain way might be more resistant to that. And maybe more aligned with like an early career hire that wants to hold off on that, that wants to do it for themselves. And I think there's a lot of reasons that that is. Like there's a lot of gray area in between about like where you decide to use and not use. But Vivian, do you have any takes on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to like deeply know the fundamentals of something. I think back to the point that I've been hearing from employers around like we want early talent that knows the basics of like we want to know like Python and object-oriented programming. Like some of these courses that you're learning in college are really valuable because it gives you that I think of it as like the railroad tracks to know like how to navigate something. You understand the principles, you understand why something might be, and you understand how to ask good questions around it. Um, so yeah, I think the fundamentals are very important. But with AI in the world, you have a lot more tools to build the train, maybe to close out on that train analogy.
I love that. Okay, a little bit of a check. We can, before we dive in, maybe we'll do one or two more questions. But first, I'll just plug next week's similar one. I get to talk with Christine Cruz Vergara, who's our Chief Education Strategy Officer, about the future of entry-level roles. So will they be around? We kind of spoiled it a little bit here, but I promise you the data is also very compelling, and Christine is very much an expert on this too. So there will be some really great conversation, and I've loved this chat on a Friday afternoon. It's kind of it's wild. So maybe we'll close out on one more question. Vivian, I'm thinking how yeah, there's one from Xavier that says, what do you think some products might look like at Handshake that incorporate AI? You've kind of touched on that a little, but I'm curious if there's anything you didn't highlight.
Oh, I mean, so great to try to squeeze this in the last minute. Well, okay, I think the thing I didn't show you the visuals of is what the conversational piece looks like on the employer side, because I think we have the opportunity to use that in many places across the product. One example is at the time that you're creating a job that you want to source for, we are asking you what are the most important things you're looking for, right? And if you say creativity, we might ask you, great, like what's an example of what good looks like when you say creativity? And so with that, we're actually able to get a lot deeper on what a great candidate looks like and then proactively surface more candidates like that to you.
Well, with that, I might close out, but feel free if you had more questions or more things to talk about, feel free to show up next week. But until then, thanks, Vivian.
Thank you all. This was super energizing and thanks for having me, Randy.
Yeah.